Okay, guys, today we're going to have a fun little discussion of how motorsports debunks climate physics based on a comment that I received on YouTube, I think, a few weeks ago. So let's just, here's my title page, How Modern Physics Does Not Understand Averages. All right. So just to set the scene here, let's be reminded of the comparison between fake political physics and real climate physics or real physics. So of course, as you should know by now, in fake political physics, what they do to create climate alarms so that they can control the world is spread incoming sunshine over the entire surface area of the Earth at once, diluting the power of sunshine and diluting its heating power down to only minus 18 degrees Celsius, basically making the sun irrelevant to the climate. And they actually even literally do it on a flat Earth. This is their diagrams. You've seen my other videos where I've referenced, where I've shown a slide of a whole bunch of references to diagrams just like this. These diagrams form the basis of climate physics in modern academic university physics. These are in peer-reviewed literature, and they are literally flat Earth theory. That's what it is. In real physics, of course, you have the sunshine coming in real time, and in real time, the sunshine can create a very warm climate. It can create the whole climate altogether and can generate very high temperatures, and the solar heat transferring through the atmosphere is the climate, or the response to that is the formation of the climate and all that. So by in climate alarm, by them averaging the sun, they think that they can average solar input over the entire surface area of the Earth at once and still use that as a solar input, even though they've just, in doing that, reduce solar input to only minus 18 degrees Celsius, and therefore have actually made the sun irrelevant. If you do it in real physics, you use actually then the real-time, real incoming power of sunlight as it actually comes in, because that is what is actually generating and driving the climate. All right, so let's look at this comment that I had. Mr. S. Holzauer replies to me, "If you are uncomfortable with averaging, this is no more complicated than the following. Two cars complete a 500-mile trip in 10 hours. The first car travels exactly 50 miles an hour for 10 hours. The average speed of this car is 50 miles an hour. The second car travels at a non-constant speed, but still arrives in 10 hours. We don't know exactly what the instantaneous speed of the second car is, but the average speed is still 50 miles an hour. My problem is not in understanding averages. My problem is how you fellows in climate physics are applying averages. So let's go on. What we want in real physics, in real science, guys, is to understand the car. The car is what we want to understand. And the car, in this analogy, would be the climate. That's what we want to understand. Okay? We want to understand what drives the car. We want to understand the car's engine, because the car is the object of interest, okay? So we want to understand the car's engine, what drives the car, what propels it, and why it drives the car in the way that it does. So of course the engine is the solar heat and the car is the climate. We want to understand how and why the solar heat is driving the climate in the way that it does, okay? So, ready for a revelation? This is a huge, amazing revelation that is apparently very difficult for academic scientists to understand. The average performance of the car does not explain its actual performance. Okay? Just like the average input of the sun over the whole entire surface area of the Earth at once does not explain the performance of the sun on the climate. Okay? So the average performance of the car does not explain its actual performance. What we are interested in is the actual performance of the car. Okay? So imagine in motorsports, if for some, whatever you call those Formula One racing cars, what if they designed and engineered that car and did all their tests and all their predictions about how to win the race and everything like that based on the car's average performance rather than the car's peak performance? What if they said that the car had no peak performance and it was all just based on its average, and the average performance of the car included when the car was just sitting in the garage doing nothing? Like when the sun is not shining at night, averaging the sunshine where it doesn't actually exist, when it's not actually doing any work. Does that make any sense to do that? The average doesn't tell you anything about the actual physics. So why are academics so out of touch with science and physics. Isn't it strange that you have physicists saying these things? Remember in my last video where those fellows were saying, oh, you must not understand basic geometry. Guys, I'm showing you the basic geometry. Of course I understand basic geometry. The question is, do you understand how to apply basic geometry at a level beyond what you might learn in grade 9 geometry class? Can you understand how to apply those concepts in a more rational way to tell you things about physics and reality rather than fictional averages? So I'll tell you why. This is my little theory on why academics are out of touch with reality. It's because they don't come from the farm anymore. Because for the last couple generations, most physicists are coming from the city. So let me give you just a sort of anecdotal example. So I grew up on a farm, but I go to school mostly with people who weren't in a farm. So when I was in undergrad, I went to a conference. And so my friends and I, my physics friends, student friends, and I had to take an airplane. And it was a Dash 8, so it was a prop-driven, turboprop-driven airplane. So when we landed, as we were landing, I just randomly asked my physics student friend beside me, when the prop turned on the thrust reversers as we landed, I said, hey, do you know how that works? Because I knew how it works, so I was just wondering if he knew how. Do you know how that works? How does reverse thrust work on an engine like that, on a turboprop engine? And so his answer was, the engine reverses. And I was shocked at this answer. He thought that the engine would reverse. So I explained to him, no, the engine isn't reversing. The propeller is changing pitch. The propeller keeps rotating in the same way, but it changes its pitch, and therefore changes which way it's pushing the air. See, this person had no clue whatsoever. It was just completely outside of his realm of experience. That you can't take something that's rotating at several thousand RPM and instantaneously reverse it. He thought that the engine instantaneously reversed direction. That's what he thought, that you could instantaneously reverse the direction of a propeller. Now, anyone who comes from the farm, you know that that's impossible. You know that if you did that to something, if you did that to a tractor's PTO, for example, you would destroy the tractor. It would destroy itself. If you instantly stop something that's rotating at high RPM with a lot of momentum behind it, if you instantly stop it or reverse it, you will actually destroy it if you could actually come up with a force to actually do that to something. So for the last couple of generations, we don't have physicists anymore who don't come from a farm, and they are kind of out of touch with reality. They don't know how they don't really have a good intuitive developed understanding from their childhood or something of physics, just of how things like bump together or something, you know. Basically, we're at a point today, I think, where basically any farmer, welder, HVAC tech, truck driver, housewife, and children are basically smarter than today's academics and physicists. There was a physicist I know who said, regular people are so stupid for thinking of academics as out of touch with reality, when what we study is reality. I don't think you guys are actually studying reality anymore. You're making up fictions and studying that. So anyway, let's get back to this car example. So what if we have a Firebird, a 76 Firebird, which can go to, so this is a plot of these vehicles' speed versus time in over 24 hours, and they're driving 50 kilometers or something. So this Firebird goes all the way up to 200 kilometers per hour and then slows down and then stops because it's arrived at its destination. This 83 Chevette can only get up to 50 kilometers per hour and makes it to the same destination, but in 24 hours. So the Firebird, the 76 Firebird, makes it to the destination in 6 hours because it could go all the way up to 200 kilometers per hour. The Chevette could only go 50 kilometers per hour, and so only made that same destination in a full 24 hours. Now, these vehicles in that time span have the exact same average speed. So if you were only to ever think of the average speed, does the average speed of these two vehicles tell you anything about what these vehicles' performance could have been? It could actually be anything. It could be anything in between, bigger or less than these two examples. It could be anything in between. By using the average, you actually, if that's all the knowledge you have is the average, which is what the climate alarmists and climate physicists want to do, is just look at the averages only and forget the real-time performance, then you actually completely destroy any knowledge whatsoever of the performance of the actual system. Its inputs, the performance of the engine, for example, the performance of solar heating, and all that, right? So why don't they understand very basic, simple things like this? It's very strange. So believing that the average is actual, and you see them saying that, like for example, Roy Spencer in that one quote to me was like, was saying, it gives the actual average input. And I was like, what do you mean by actual average? The average isn't actual. The average is fictional and doesn't tell you anything but what the actual input was. So believing that the average is quote unquote actual is actually to destroy knowledge of the actual, of the real physics and the real performance that was actually going on to create the average. The average of the solar input is not the solar input. Averaging the solar input over the entire surface area of the Earth at once, making the solar input minus 18 degrees Celsius, is not the solar input. That's not what the solar input is. I know you can calculate that as an average, but it's wrong and meaningless. It doesn't tell you about what the sun is actually doing, and it doesn't tell you how the climate was created. So academic political climate physics destroys the knowledge of the sun, the presence of the sun and solar heating, and from there develops political physics, which reduces to flat earth theory. This diagram needed to be brought to the front. It's behind the text here, but hopefully that's fine for you guys. I'm not going to change it because I'm on a roll here. So academic political physics destroys knowledge of the sun, the presence of the sun and solar heating, and from there develops political physics, which reduces to flat earth theory. They actually literally draw their founding diagrams. This is where all of political physics, all of where climate physics begins, is flat earth diagrams. And then they accuse me of oversimplifying things. No, you guys have oversimplified things by spreading solar input over the entire surface area of the Earth at once and thinking that that average is meaningful. They reduce the sun to being irrelevant, to being only minus 18 degrees Celsius worth of heating potential input. And then they create this fake greenhouse effect, this thing that they call a greenhouse effect, this mechanics in here, which they steal. They steal the term greenhouse from a real greenhouse. And their mechanics here is not how a real greenhouse actually functions, but they just call it that because everyone knows a greenhouse feels warm, right? So they just steal that conveniently and create this mechanism where the climate has to create itself because the sun cannot create the climate because the sun is only minus 18 degrees Celsius. So, and then from this, what else are they saying today? I don't know if you've seen the recent articles, but people who are paying attention probably have. They are now even saying in their publications and in their media that we should start being cannibals, that we should start eating human corpses for the sake of climate change to help fight the weather. They've created a grand scheme to fight the weather. That's what this is. It's to fight the weather. It's not about fighting climate change. They're fighting the weather. They want you to fight the weather, and they want you to fight the weather by being a cannibal. Guys, we're going back to like the dark ages, the dark medieval times, or like the ancient Aztec times or something, where they would just sacrifice people to their gods for the sake of their weather and stuff. That's basically where these people want to go back to. That's where academic physicists want to go back to. Guys, listen to this for example. Just listen to this for a moment. Just listen to how insane this is. Academic physics at universities want you to eat each other for the sake of climate change and fighting the weather. They're going to start teaching your kids that it is okay for them to cannibalize each other, to eat other humans for the sake of fighting the weather. That's what academic university physics is now bringing you via Climate Alarm and their climate physics. So this was my response, my original response to that S. Holzhauer fellow on YouTube. And so I had just said, and so since the average speed of the car is 50 miles per hour, then the engine must not be powerful enough to make the car go faster than 50 miles per hour. And if at any point the air moved out of the way of the car at a speed greater than 50 miles per hour, it was because the air moved itself out of the way with its own moving power, like the climate creating itself. Since the engine of the car can't make anything move greater than 50 miles per hour, since that's the car's average speed, like they've done with solar heat. Since solar heat is only minus 18 degrees Celsius because they've averaged it down to places where the sun is not shining, like averaging the average speed of the car while the car is sitting in the garage doing nothing. So we will model the car's engine as only powerful enough to go 50 miles per hour, since that's the car's average speed. So since the car's average speed is 50 miles per hour, then that's what we'll model the engine's power as, just like we'll do with the sun. Since the sun's average, and this fictional average they've created, is only minus 18 degrees Celsius worth of input, then that's what the real sun is actually doing in real time. That's the actual performance of solar heat. Anything that happens greater than 50 miles per hour is because the air moves itself out of the way of the car, just like the climate creates itself because solar heat is only minus 18 degrees Celsius. So that's what they've done. So anyway, that was just my comment. It was sort of it's, you know, I'm not attacking him or anything. I'm just saying, you know, this is the idea. Think of the analogy. This is the analogy you created. You're trying to create this analogy about average speed of cars. I get average speed of cars. I know that. The point is that doesn't tell you about the performance of the system, right? Of the actual performance. And the actual performance is the actual physics. The averages aren't actual physics. Averages aren't telling you science and physics and mathematics, okay? So this was this fellow's lovely response. Mr. Postma, I explained your confusion with the solar constant. By that he means the solar averaging. And all you can do is reply with a nonsensical rant about average versus max speed of cars. Sorry I wasted my time. This is all very simple applied math, physics, astrophysics, or whatever you want to call it. I don't understand how you can be simultaneously so confused by it and so unaware of your confusion. So that's what we're dealing with, people. That's what we're dealing with, is just that sort of stupidity from people. Yeah, it's not my confusion. Come on. I'm not the one that's confused. You fellows are obviously extremely confused about what averages are and how to use them and what they mean, and whether it's meaningful to average the performance of your car over time in which the car is sitting in the garage doing nothing. Does it make sense to do that, to estimate your car's performance? Does it make sense to estimate the sun's performance by averaging the power of sunlight into nighttime when the sun isn't shining? That makes no sense. Why can't you people understand basic things? These are basic things. Anyone can understand this. Farmers can understand this. Housewives can understand this. People who cook food can understand this. Children can understand this. Why can't academic physicists understand this? Why can't university physics understand this? Guys, this is in physics classrooms that they're doing this, that they're teaching this stuff to people, to our kids. I was taught this originally around the year 2000 when I was in my planetary astrophysics course. I learned this, and I said, well, the teachers, you know, I never thought anything of it. It was just something you learned, and then you wrote back down when you took the test, and then that was that. Well, it's now we see what's come of that, right? It's bunk, and it needs to be destroyed because there's nothing good about this. There's nothing good about this. This is all just some sort of insane scheme. Just to do what? Just to hate humans? Just to hate humanity or something like that? Where is it ending? Guys, look at where this is ending. They're now going to start teaching our children to be cannibals, to cannibalize each other for the sake of fighting the weather, to fight the weather. And over the last few weeks, we've already seen, if you've been paying attention, the articles and videos going around about people eating bugs. You should eat maggots out of your garbage. There was an actual video of a lady who goes to her garbage and picks maggots out of it to eat. And she's saying, oh, look how good I'm being for fighting the, well, to fight climate change, but it's really fighting the weather. They're talking about fighting the weather. Climate change is caused by the sun and galactic level forces, forces that are happening on the scale of the galaxy, on the scale of hundreds of billions of stars, and the cosmic rays that come from outside the galaxy, and our sun's magnetic effects. That's what actually causes climate change. And they're going to say that we're going to fight that, but they just put it in terms of, you know, we're going to fight it by fighting carbon dioxide, the basis of life. Okay, anyway, you all understand how insane this is. I hope this video was good. I hope you liked the slide with the Firebird and the Chevette comparison. Okay, take care, guys. Bye.